Welcome to Check This Out, podcast for kids.
And their grown-ups, where we talk about interesting people, places, ponderings, and past moments from history that make an impact on the world around us. My name is Amy Contreras.
And I'm Cece.
Welcome back to another episode in our newest series on
Women Who Changed the World.
February is Black History Month, so our first few Women Who Changed the World episodes honor the Black women who have worked so hard to make our world a better place. The women we are highlighting broke barriers, stood up for others, challenged what the world thought was possible, and created doors for future generations to walk through.
They did so much.
They did. And before we get into another episode in our series on
Women Who Changed the World,
make sure to subscribe so you can be the first to get all of our new content and episodes.
let's get into it.
I am so excited about today's episode on Wangari Maathai. I learned about this woman who changed the world when reading a book with Cece a couple of years ago, and have been fascinated by her story ever since.
I remember her.
You're going to learn all about her in today's episode, but she was just so incredible. I can't wait to share some amazing information about her. She accomplished so much in her life, and the list of how she impacted the world around her is long, but you need to know some of them right up front.
Here are just a few.
Wangari Maathai was the first woman in East and Central Africa to earn a doctorate degree. She authored 4 books. She's the founder of the Green Belt movement, which has planted more than 51 million trees in Kenya and helped more than 900,000 Kenyan women. She was the first female professor in Kenya, and she's won over 50 awards or recognitions through her career fighting for the environment and democracy. Just some of the examples include she was inducted into the Earth Hall of Fame in 2010. She won the Nelson Mandela Award for Health and Human Rights in 2007. In 2006, she won the World Citizenship Award. And in 2005, she was named one of the most 100 influential people in the world by Time magazine. She was also the 2004 Nobel Peace Prize laureate. She was the first African woman to receive this honor.
Was there anything she didn't do?
I mean, honestly, she did even more than I just told you. Wangari was absolutely incredible, which is why I had to hit you with all those cool facts right up front so you can understand why we are so excited to talk about her impact on the world around her and why she's a woman who we're talking about that changed the world.
Listeners, keep your ears open.
Because at the end of the episode, we will give you 3 facts that you can continue to check out on your own about Wangari Maathai if you want to learn more. See if you can guess what facts we highlight at the end of the episode. Now, let me tell you the story of Dr. Wangari Maathai and her impact.
I'm excited to learn more.
Good. Back in the mid-1970s, women in rural Kenya were reporting that streams were drying up and they were having to walk further and further to get firewood. Their food supply was also at risk.
That was terrible.
Yeah, and they couldn't just go to the store to buy these things. They had to go out and find them for their families. At the time, Professor Maathai was working with the National Council of Women of Kenya, and so she heard about these reports and the struggles of the rural Kenyan women. Dr. Maathai had the idea that if village women could improve the environment by planting trees, it would give them a fuel source for things like firewood, and planting the trees could slow the process of deforestation, thereby helping the environment.
What does that mean?
Check this out. Deforestation is a big word. Have you heard of it before? Deforestation is basically when companies or people or a government cut down a lot of trees in a specific area. In Kenya, deforestation was happening where lots of trees were cut down or removed to make room for farms or mining. So millions of trees in Kenya had been cut down and it was impacting the environment.
I want to check out more about that.
You should. And as a result of all these reports, Wangari Maathai knew she had to do something.
Like what, Mama?
In 1977, Dr. Maathai founded the Green Belt movement, an organization that still exists today. The Green Belt movement encouraged Kenyan women to work together to grow tree seedlings and plant trees. When they planted the trees, it helped them to bind the soil, which was good for the surrounding environment. The Green Belt movement also taught the women how to store rainwater and provided them with food and firewood. For their efforts of growing the seedlings and planting the trees, the women received a small paycheck. The Greenbelt movement educated these women on the process, and it ultimately provided jobs and hope.
How incredible. That's amazing.
Since 1977, the Greenbelt movement has planted over 51 million trees in Kenya.
Wow. I love it.
I know, it's incredible. Wangari Maathai's organization, the Greenbelt Movement, still plants trees today on public lands, and they have a partnership with the Kenyan Army to help access remote areas for more planting and tree planting on Army lands. When Dr. Maathai was alive, the Greenbelt Movement established a Pan-African Greenbelt network in 1986. This network was used to teach 40 other individuals from other African countries beyond Kenya to use the same tree planting approach. Some other African countries that have successfully launched similar organizations include Tanzania, Uganda, Lesotho, Ethiopia, and Zimbabwe. But Dr. Maathai's tree planting efforts weren't always met with open arms.
What do you mean, Mama?
Wangari Maathai also protested against the use of land that she felt was unethical, or when people in positions of power were acting unethical with the land. In 1992, she protested the Kenyan president's distribution of land. He was giving it to his friends and people who were sucking up to him. During the protest, she was beaten unconscious by thugs and state police.
That is not okay.
But that didn't stop her. One of the reasons I'm so inspired by Wangari Maathai is she didn't just jump into action, but she used her education and experience to equip others with knowledge and bring them along on the journey.
She sounds really smart.
She was, Cece. Did I mention how highly educated she was? Dr. Maathai was born in Kenya in 1940, but she attended college in the United States. She got her degree in biological sciences from Mount St. Scholastica College in Kansas in 1964. And after that, she got a Master of Science from the University of Pittsburgh in 1966. She studied for her doctorate degree in Germany and at the University of Nairobi. She got her PhD in 1971 from the University of Nairobi. Wangari Maathai was the first woman in East and Central Africa to earn a doctorate degree.
Wow!
At the University of Nairobi, she was a professor of veterinary anatomy. She became chair of the department in 1976 and an associate professor in 1977. For being department chair and associate professor, she was the first woman to achieve those positions in the region.
My mind is blown.
Professor Maathai's education and focus made her a trailblazer, but the creation and impact of her organization, the Greenbelt Movement, was far-reaching, and it was what ultimately led her to be recognized as a Nobel Peace Prize laureate in 2004.
What does that mean?
The Nobel Peace Prize is an international award that's given to people or organizations that work to create peace and resolve conflict around the world. It's one of the highest honors in the world.
Oh, that's important.
Her Nobel Peace Prize was for her contribution to sustainable development, democracy, and peace. Her conservation work was incredibly important. The work Professor Maathai did for the environment by planting all those trees is also known as conservation work, or working to protect the environment. But in addition to her conservation work, she was an advocate for human rights and women's issues. She often raised these issues to the United Nations, increasing awareness and action.
Was there anything she didn't do?
Well, she also saw through her work with the poor in the Greenbelt movement how deforestation and environmental impacts were actually tied back to democracy and the role of political leaders. She saw that elected leaders had the opportunity to use government funds and resources to protect and invest in the environment, but they often didn't choose to do that. Over time, she became more involved in politics as an activist and advisor, bringing environmental concerns to public leaders. In December of 2002, Professor Maathai was elected to Parliament in Kenya with an overwhelming 98% of the vote. She was also appointed as Assistant Minister for the Environment of Natural Resources and Wildlife by the President. It's quite a mouthful. Before she died in 2011, she authored 4 books. One explained the philosophy of the Greenbelt movement, one was an autobiography of her life, and the other books focused on Africa.
She had a job.
Well, she was a driven woman who saw a path to make the lives of others around her better, but specifically the women of Kenya. She was a pioneer who linked environmental protection with human rights and democracy, and showed that protecting the environment also protects the lives of the people who live in that space. And that means holding people in power accountable and using democracy to drive change for human rights and the environment. Wangari Maathai helped more than 900,000 Kenyan women from her tree planting campaign by selling seedlings for reforestation.
What an amazing story!
Professor Maathai is an amazing story. Even at the end of her life, during her last days when she was struggling with ovarian cancer, she was laying in the hospital. She begged that she didn't want to be buried in a wooden coffin, another part of her lifelong battle to save trees and the rest of the environment. I hope you learned something new about this incredible woman who changed the world. Now we're going to give you 3 facts about Wangari Maathai that you can research further after the episode is over. Do you think you can guess what the 3 facts are?
Fact number 1.
Professor Maathai established the Greenbelt movement in 1977 and has helped plant over 51 million trees in Kenya. Learn more about the Greenbelt movement, investigate how they empower women, and work to fight for democracy.
Fact number 2.
She was elected to parliament and was involved in politics to help advocate for the environment and human rights. Learn about what other roles she held.
Fact number 3.
Professor Maathai won lots of awards in her life, over 50 internationally recognized ones. Learn more about some of these awards, like the Nobel Peace Prize, the World Citizenship Award, or the Earth Hall of Fame Award.
What was your favorite fact?
We are almost done with our episode on the woman who changed the world, Wangari Maathai. But first, you know we can't finish up an episode of Check This Out without ending on a rhyme.
We wrote you a poem.
In Kenya's land where the sun shines bright, Wangari Maathai fought for what was right. She created a movement for earth and for girls, educating them with seeds, nature's pearls. She and others learned and planted trees, their efforts helping Kenya, bringing back the green. A doctor, a teacher, she paved the way for Kenyan women to grow stronger every day. With over 50 million trees growing anew, she did with many what would be impossible with few. She taught us to take action, to plant and to stand. Nobel winner, activist, professor, a true helping hand. This was episode 14 of Check This Out, podcast for kids, and the 4th episode in our series on women who changed the world, as we also celebrate Black History Month and the stories of the amazing Black women who have changed the world through their legacies. Here at Check This Out, we know there's a lot of information and it can be overwhelming to find accurate information online. This podcast is a tool for you to help you do something called citing your sources. As you get older and do projects for school, you'll learn that certain types of websites or information aren't verified or don't have evidence and documentation to back them up. On Check This Out, we use verified sources to build the stories you hear about. Verified sources are materials or information that have been confirmed for accuracy and credibility through an evaluation process. Our sources for this week's episode on Wangari Maathai include the Greenbelt Movement, nobelprize.org, the United Nations, and Encyclopedia Britannica.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next episode.